my wife was noticing I was progressively getting madder and madder after watching these videos, and she's like, "Why are you even doing this?"
While watching these nominations, you got 90 scars.
Yeah, 90 scars. We're also here to talk about 90s cars, by the way.
On Review Lounge.
Yes, this is a Review Lounge.
Review Lounge.
You know, I'm EJ Massa. These are the same people who are on the show all the time.
What do you mean? They don't know this at all.
It's the 3rd annual Oscars Review Lounge cast.
That's
Yes.
right.
Where the primary goal is to watch all of the Best Picture nominees.
That's right.
And show off a cute baby.
Yes.
So all 4 of us have watched all Best Picture nominees for the 2018 Oscars.
That's right.
Do we want to make any preliminary comments?
Sadness.
Well, first off, let me just explain that we will be talking spoilers.
Yeah.
Yes, spoilers. So in the description below, there'll be time code where you can skip around if you want to watch a certain movie.
Or EJ, they can go to our brand new YouTube channel, one separate from the main Red Cow Entertainment channel, that we please ask you to subscribe to because we need the subscribers. Yeah. It's called RCE, Red Cow Entertainment, Pods and Clips.
Mm-hmm. So every single movie will be in that channel as separate clips. So if you don't want to watch this whole long odyssey, go there, or there'll be a link in the comments.
As well as the previous year's movie reviews, they'll all be there too.
That's right.
So if you want to kind of binge on movies that like were the talk of the town for 2 seconds and then no one talked about them again, like The Revenant, you can watch our reviews of those.
But other than that, yes, this year I think was supremely disappointing.
Yeah.
It was a bad one.
But is it disappointing at this point, or does it live up to exactly what our expectations of the Oscar films are?
Yeah, probably that one.
Well, so I had to, in order to cut up the clips for the new channel, I had to kind of revisit what our thoughts were the previous 2 years. And hi there. And the first year we agreed that it was a bad year.
Yes.
And last year we said, hey, not too bad.
Yeah.
There were some good ones here.
So this is a quality dip.
Yeah, and I would even say that, like, okay, it's one thing for me to not enjoy the films. It's another, like, for me to feel as though the Emperor has no clothes constantly.
Yeah.
Where like, there's a lot of cheesiness all of a sudden.
Yeah. Like really saccharine films.
A constant naked emperor.
Like cliches, like all of a sudden these movies that are supposed to be nuanced and mature and have something interesting to say that no one's ever said before. It's like
Nicholas Sparks novels.
They're like Nicholas Sparks novels. They're like written by and for children.
Yeah, there's nothing like very little original filmmaking.
And I've got like grown intellectuals telling me that these are good movies.
Yeah, and they're very, very shallow, like with no subtext at all.
And so the only thing that explains it, unfortunately, it's either that the populace in general is kind of a little dumb, and so that's how this happens, or it's that they're forgiving cheesy movies or cliche movies because they think that the movie's important for some reason.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, for instance, that it might get people to vote a certain way.
I think there are stakes involved.
And that's kind of anti-art.
Yeah.
To be that political with your, and you know, a lot of times when people say the Oscars are political, they're talking about the political process of who wins.
Yes.
This year and maybe previous years, it's really about like, it's like the Democratic National Convention made a bunch of movies. Am I getting too political? I'm just calling it how I see it.
Well, I think that there's definitely motivation within the Academy to select certain types of films now. I mean, especially after they were lambasted so heavily for not, Oscar so white kind of stuff.
Yeah, Oscar's so dry land, so they have to put a sea creature in. It's really not cool.
Like, let's just come out and say it, is the election of Trump, in the same way that like when Batman shows up on the scene, it eventually creates Joker. Like, does Trump showing up in the White House create like shitty movies that people think are virtuous?
I don't know if it's necessarily any worse this year than it was last year, though.
I mean, to be fair, I'm really just thinking about the post.
Right.
Do we want to just get right into it? Just get into the post? Because I think we should start off with the worst one.
Yeah.
Just so we don't end on like a sour note. I want to have at least some hope.
You want to work toward Get Out and Dunkirk?
Yeah, I want to like work toward the good.
I've said it before in previous podcasts. Steven Spielberg at some point lost the thread. the Phantom Thread. So here, I have a theory about Steven Spielberg. I don't think that he actually goes on set anymore. Here's how I think a Steven Spielberg movie gets made.
Do you think he's a phantom director?
Yeah.
If
yeah.
you've ever been on set with him, please confirm or deny in the comments below.
He goes, this is the kind of movie I might want to make, or somebody comes to him with a script, and then he reads
I think this movie should exist in the world.
He reads the script and he goes, oh yeah, totally. And he sits down probably for 5 or 6 long pre-production meetings. Where
Oh, I thought you were going to say for 5 or 6 long minutes.
I don't think he spends a lot of time like taking notes or like really going in or doing his own research. I don't think any of that's happening. I don't think he's doing any of his own legwork. I think he's doing a lot of ad-libbing and talking out loud in these meetings where he's flipping through the pages going, yeah, and this would be really great, and this could be Meryl Streep.
And someone else is taking notes?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he gets a few ideas that he's really married to and really wants to make sure that they come through.
And I think he's got a couple of unit directors who he's worked with for years who then go out and direct the film.
It reminds me a lot, I don't know if you remember in the mid-90s, Warner Brothers had started their own channel, and there was a lot of Steven Spielberg produced shows, which I think he just, pitched something to some random creative people and was like, hey, make a show like this, and you got Pinky and the Brain, Freakazoid, Animaniacs.
Steven Spielberg presents.
It feels a lot like that's what this is.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would explain how he's able to make movies like at the frequency that he does.
Yeah.
Because like BFG just came out like half a year ago or something.
Yeah.
And then like there was the year he made like Tintin and Warhorse like within like 3 months.
And then he made a video game too, like Boom Blocks.
Right. So I think anybody who thinks that like Ready Player One's going to be fabulous is lying to themselves. You know who I keep hearing from? People who really like the book and go, oh, I don't know, I think it looks pretty good. It's like, no, you're optimistic. And you shouldn't be.
Because they see a bunch of things in the trailer, like, oh, that's from a thing I like.
Looks like Minority Report. What did they? I don't know what they're talking about.
There's a DeLorean there.
Yeah. So
what is the post about?
well, the first 45 minutes to an hour is a lot of farting around and having really bad dialogue about like, a news organization and another news organization down the street called New York Times that you never see.
You never see that one. It sounds like a lot of interesting stuff is happening.
Yeah.
Are they like the Gimbals of the situation?
Yeah.
Like Miracle
Yeah,
on
you spent
34th
just a
Street?
couple minutes involved with them.
Yeah, actually, it's a lot like that. It's quite like that. There's some like real like made-for-TV movie type stuff about the Vietnam War where it feels almost like low budget and crap.
Oh yeah.
And there's actually literally like him like going through a computer and like the text going across his eyes.
Oh yeah, and he's reading. He's like, all right, well, let's just for the summary. It's the release of the Pentagon Papers. Is that what it is? And and whether or not they should publish them.
That sounds super interesting. They're gonna make it wicked boring.
Yeah.
To be clear, it's not Watergate. It's about the general deception of the federal government to the American public about the Vietnam War.
Yes.
And I guess Nixon was so tyrannical in his personality and the way he ran things that he kind of had a lot of the news organizations in his pocket, and they were all too intimidated to ever run a story about this sort of thing, especially after really damning papers like this were leaked.
Yes.
And so the reporter, he gets the papers and he's scanning them, and then it overlays on his face and he's reading them. It's so
So
bad.
cliche, yeah. Like I said, I think I said during watching it, it felt like a Lifetime movie. I mean, it had the same shot, the same lighting, the same quality.
Oh, and the lighting, by the way, like there's every single room has light flooding into it through the windows, and the room is filled with fog. Yeah. And I said that to somebody, and they were like, "Well, it's the '70s. That's smoke." And I'm like, "No, it's cinematography."
Yeah, and
Don't be annoying.
It's kind of like how
Don't excuse this.
all these Spielberg movies are shot now.
Lincoln looked exactly the same.
Yeah.
Cheesecloth over the lens too. I mean, really kind of just nothing's really sharp.
And this is what I mean by when I say I think Spielberg movies are canned. Is I think they're ready to go. They're like off the assembly line.
Ready movie one.
Meryl Streep plays the owner of the Washington Post at the time, who inherited it from her dead husband.
And Tom Hanks tells you as much. He's like, well, you're my publisher and my boss.
Yeah.
It's like dialogue like that. And this is the most brilliant movie that's going to save America.
I mean, and I thought he was tremendously underutilized, directed to play a gravelly voiced.
He has a cartoon voice.
Tom Hanks' performance in this is shameful.
It's astoundingly
It's a
bad.
disgrace.
I think this is the worst acting I've seen him do.
He's literally like, yeah, well, what should we do about the Post?
He literally is.
It's
gravelly
insane.
Post.
I don't know who approved it.
And not only that, but Meryl Streep plays this wishy-washy woman, which I mean, I don't think the original the character she was playing was supposed to come off that wishy-washy. She's so kind of just
It's like breathy and nervous. Like, oh, should we publish? Yes, we should. Yes, we should.
And the whole crux of the movie is kind of like is she going to decide to publish these or not? And it comes off like a whim. Like,
Yeah, it does. It
I'm
comes
just
off as a
gonna do
whim.
Like it's almost like it could have gone either way.
Yeah.
Because
And she didn't really care either way.
There was no like defining moment where it was like, oh, we have to do this because blah blah blah.
she ends up feeling pressured, morally pressured by her own, where she's like, I think we ought to. But there is the moment where she said, let's do it. It almost feels the slightest bit flippant.
Like they shot it both ways and decided later which one they would do.
And so naturally Nixon was going to go after them for that. And the sort of the last half hour, which is very rushed, is it's a First Amendment Supreme Court ruling. It was kind of like joint Washington Post and New York Times.
That also sounds like a more interesting.
And by the way, we spent half the movie in this really slow, boring film about IPOs and banking and like establishing these characters that you didn't care about and plot lines you didn't care about. And then suddenly we get the interesting stuff in the last 30 minutes. And then it's still not that interesting.
Yeah, the stakes aren't clear, and it's not like they have these shots of like Nixon's silhouette, and they play the tapes.
It's such cheeseball. Where he's like you're looking through the White House window, and he's like back of the head to the camera.
He's like-
and
Never
he's
see his
talking
face.
He's talking on the phone. You hear like the.
Like, I don't like this New York Times. Not even about the Post. New York Times, and it's like it doesn't feel like if there was some other pressure, any sort of thing that made it feel like there was a real risk.
It should
to
have been a
publish it.
documentary.
Yeah.
It's not because to dramatize it just makes it goofy looking.
Yeah.
And like for some reason Meryl Streep, like because she is in like period drama costume, like everybody's like, oh, we gotta go out and see that. She's gonna do a real commanding performance. I'm like, no, she's boring.
It was actually one of her worst performances.
Yeah, it's so phoned in, and then at the end, and
Well,
you
that
see,
was like, was it Natalie Portman who played Jackie O?
Yeah.
And it was just a horrible.
at least she was
performance.
bold. She was over the top in that. She was like doing her real Jackie O voice.
Yeah.
But at the end, there's
Almost comparable to Tom Hanks'
yeah, just cartoonish. But at the end, there's that line that you see in every trailer, which is, journalism is the first draft of history, and so it's.
Roll.
And of course, if you watch like any of the press, it's all about like, oh, this movie was really we thought this movie was really important to make because Trump doesn't like the news, and it's like, but it's not comparable. He's not suing anybody.
No,
He's not.
It's not even close. There's nothing that even relates to.
It's like I know, like.
You could probably make a good movie that has a commentary on Trump, but this is not the movie.
No.
No. It was a movie that came out of a cheese factory.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking your advice, Bob, not your permission.
You can't do this.
The legacy of the company is at stake.
What will happen if we don't publish? We will lose. The country will lose.
What are you going to do, Mrs. Graham?
All right, well, so my next least favorite personally, but you're not going to agree, was Phantom Thread.
Yeah.
The supremely pretentious Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yes. It's about a famous dress designer, and he
Played by Daniel Day-Lewis.
Played by Daniel Day-Lewis. Is
Is this based on a true story or is this a made up?
Is it based on a true story?
I do not know.
I think it's made up.
Yeah, I think it's made up. So it's made up. In this world, he's a famous dress designer, and he's very concentrated on his work.
Apparently, in London in the 50s. I didn't
Yes.
get this from the actual film. I got this from the internet later.
Oh, I see. But he's very very orderly, very much like likes things a certain way, and then he falls in love with this woman, and it's hinted that he's like gone through women all the time because he's so hard to deal with, because he's so focused on order and his work.
Yeah,
and
the beginning of the
obsessive.
movie is him getting bored with his current girl and kind of ditching her.
And then this woman comes in and falls in love with him, but gets quickly annoyed that he's so picky, and then poisons him, and then he falls in love with her, and it's pretty crazy. And he has like mommy issues.
He misses his mom.
He misses his mom, so that's why he's so screwed
So there's
up.
a ghost mom character.
There's a ghost mom.
There's a
character.
ghost mom.
Who I actually thought was she looked very period to me. Like that was the one thing I was like, that was kind of cool. She looked like a painting or something.
Yeah, that was a.
Let me just say the visuals I thought were really, really good in this movie, right? I think that he set a style and a tone. The costuming was lovely. It was really competently shot, but it had a lot of problems.
I think he shot it in 70 mil. Because he shot The Master in 70 mil.
Yeah, it definitely had a good texture to it.
Paul Thomas Anderson is very hit or miss for me. He's obviously, the thing I respect about the guy is he's never made a movie that he can't stand behind.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of our auteurs that we have. So you're naturally interested in what he's going to come out with. But if I'm being totally honest, I'm not really a Boogie Nights guy. I'm not really a Punch Drunk Love guy. Yeah. I'm not really a Magnolia guy.
Didn't care about the frogs raining.
Like Inherent Vice came out a couple of years ago, and that was like total dog shit. Yeah. So I've never been, like, as much as I think I probably respect this guy, I'm not sure that he and I are on the same wavelength.
Did we talk about this was supposed to be Daniel Day-Lewis's last film?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be. I don't know if I believe him.
Yeah.
But because he does his like shoemaking and woodworking in his real life, so maybe that's kind of like interesting that he's playing an obsessive dressmaker. That he's kind of an obsessive person too, because he even takes the craft of acting to the extreme level.
Right.
I
mean, but this movie definitely had, I thought, problems.
Yes.
It was 2 hours 10 minutes, and it really could have lost 40 of those.
I agree with that. I enjoyed the movie for the most part, but even I felt the time extreme. It's a repetitive movie. I feel like there's a time when she poisons him and he gets into the vulnerable state and then like falls in love with her again, basically. And then he could have found out that she poisoned him like right after that, and the movie could have ended, and that would have been I think it probably would have been a fine film. But then it goes on for 40 more minutes after that. In fact, I saw that part. I looked at my watch because I'm like, oh, the movie's ending, and I'm like, oh no, there's 40 minutes left.
Yeah, I did the same thing, EJ. I thought that we were coming down off the core of the story.
I don't think I understood the characters. Like, it's not like he fell in love with her because she challenged him and was the strong personality. She kind of submits to everything that he wants initially, then decides it's like too much and she's not enchanted by it anymore.
I agree with that. I think they didn't develop her as a character as much as they needed to. I think it's pretty obvious that she reminded him of his mother.
Yeah.
That's clear. But for her, I don't see what the draw is. I think eventually, you see that she's, respects him as a dressmaker and becomes a dressmaker herself, but like they didn't show a lot. It's way too subtle.
Like, I was very surprised when she made him that dinner and like cooked something that she knew he didn't like it that way, and I was like, where did this come from? Like, when does she decide like, I'm gonna bring you out of your box? Like,
I read it as one of those things where like she's attracted to his talent, his obsession, and then she wants to dominate it. Or she wants to become part of it, or she wants to tame it, or something along those lines. So it's a little bit Beauty and the Beast.
but I don't think they communicated that well, if that was what was going on.
No, there were more opportunities to get that message really through that the movie didn't take.
Instead, they just spend an inordinate amount of time repeating the same sequences.
Yeah, because he gets annoyed way too often.
It's like, well, it's essentially the same scene every time. It's like if you could beat out the scene, you'd be like, all right, so he was trying to stay in his zone. She disrupted him. He gets really aggressive with her. She gets really upset, and he doesn't care.
Yes, that happened 5 times. In order.
And I'm like, I get it. And as a matter of fact, like at the beginning of the movie, they established that he does this with girlfriends.
Yeah.
And so I got it. I got it in 10 minutes.
Yeah. So they could have expedited a lot of that.
And then like a lot of is watching him make the dresses and then deliver the dresses to the clients.
Yeah, and while that was probably the most visually interesting part of the film for me, just because I was so bored by the rest of the story, we didn't really need to have it.
Yeah, there was 2 dresses that were probably pivotal, which was the fat lady who had her wedding dress and they stole it after. Yep. That was pretty pivotal.
And then the other wedding dress.
The other wedding dress. So
but on that second dress, right, when he collapses because she's poisoned her, he damages the dress. We spent 4 or 5 minutes of the movie remaking the dress when there was really no reason for the movie to spend 4 or 5 minutes remaking the dress.
Yeah, I think they were trying to say it's like, oh, her poisoning had these consequences, but it didn't need to be in the movie.
It could have just fallen the other way. It would have been fine.
And then they introduced so randomly this idea toward the end of like he's not chic anymore, like he's not popular.
Yes.
People are going
Yeah,
to other dress houses, and I'm
then
like,
they drop it after that.
when did that come into play? Like it would have been nice to know if that was why he was so stressed and anxious and anal, was because he knew that he was losing prowess in his field, or I have no idea. But
It doesn't help. It doesn't help too that I have no eye for dresses or for this. Like I don't even know what I'm looking at. Like
I found the fabric and the colors in the dresses lovely.
Like, I think like the first client that came out, like the very first one, which I think was supposed to establish the gorgeousness and the beauty of what he did. I was like, it looks ugly to me. Like I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Clothes
wedding
aren't my
dress
thing.
at the end was very lovely, I thought. But
I don't know the first thing about it.
That's what's frustrating to me, because I did like the character, the main character. I like that obsessive personality. It reminds me of a lot of people I know.
Yeah.
And I
agree.
like the idea of like having somebody who is so into order, and then somebody who like kind of brings out his vulnerabilities. I like that story. And so it's frustrating to me that it's bogged down by so many things.
Yeah. It was a tough sit.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing about like I think I've said this in the past, but like movies are supposed to be like, I'm supposed to be on the edge of my seat. I'm supposed to be wanting more information that I currently don't have, that the storyteller's withholding from me and then feeding me at its rate.
one piece at a time.
And instead this was just like, yeah, I know.
Yes.
And like,
Yeah.
and then finally we get to an ending that was sort of interesting.
the sister likes her for no reason.
Yeah,
like all the underdeveloped characters.
That need to be. I think, the relationship with the sister need to be a little more developed. You know, it's a brilliantly crafted bore fest. But
Yeah, I recommend it. I definitely recommend
With
this.
a lot of really underdeveloped thoughts. There's some weird like racism for a moment where they're like whatever country she's from when they go to like that dinner party. Lots of little pieces that like they never pick up or do anything with.
No.
If you like that, if you like to maybe imagine a different film that includes those things.
I recommend this screensaver.
Yes, it's a very beautiful dress screensaver.
All your rules and your clothes and all this money and everything is a game.
This was an ambush. Stop! Are you sent here to ruin my evening? And possibly my entire life?
Stop it! Whatever you do it carefully.
Well, next up for me is Lady Bird then.
So let's quickly summarize the plot.
Well, that'll be tough.
Well, it's just a kind of a couple minutes, a couple months in a teenage girl's life. that she's
Meandering
preparing
teenage girlhood.
to enter college, right? It's really just looking at her life at the end of kind of her senior year into the very beginning of college.
Takes place in like early 2000s.
Yeah, early 2000s.
And she's a bit of an unachiever.
Yeah, but still enough achiever to get into college and go to college.
Right.
Yeah.
Like so many kids, I
And
think.
take out a bunch of student loans. It's a very frustrating movie because it reminds me of a lot of people I went to school with.
She's got quite the ego on her. She believes that she can get into college and go to all these good schools, even though she detests her own school and doesn't try. And
She, in fact, does get into the school in a state she wants to get to. She wants to go to a school far away from home. She does. She has a couple boyfriends. One's gay and one's a jerk, and that's okay.
So my number one complaint about this movie, because that really is it. Like
It's a coming of age tale, classic coming of age.
well, but most coming of age tales you can boil the themes down to something. There's a central idea. So I think Phantom Thread, one of the good things about it is it has a central idea, which is this idea of obsession and of
strength and
being
vulnerability.
and being emotionally closed and that sort of thing. I don't know what the central idea in this movie is.
No, I don't think it has a central idea. I think it just kind of it did feel to me though like we were getting a perspective on this girl's life. Though.
Even the Post has a central idea. It's like speaking truth to power and journalistic integrity. This is just like be alive.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a moment where I think she's talking to her mom, played by Roseanne's sister.
Right.
Where she's like, "Oh, what if this is like? What if I'm like this is all I can be, basically?" Like, and I think that's the theme of
So
the movie.
stagnation, maybe.
Yeah. Like, what if I can't get better than a totally awful person?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple small themes like relationships, one's relationship with your parents in high
Her
school.
relationship with her friends.
Yeah,
There's a little bit of her coming to appreciate people she didn't appreciate.
Yeah, and that's like
But they
an
kind
arc
of
they kind of set up.
throw it away with that last scene in New York.
They're all little tiny arcs, though. There's no big overarching story.
I would say the theme is also the thing that I would describe the film as, which is unfocused.
Yes.
Being unfocused. I found a lot of this. So this is supposed to take place at a time that I went to high school.
Yeah.
So you can't be telling me that like I don't get it because I'm too old. And
Yeah,
this
this is everybody in my generation was raving about this. Film,
Yeah.
because I think it's supposed to speak to that.
Well, I found some of the ways that the kids were interacting with one another like incoherent at times. Whereas like I don't even know I don't know what they're meaning to communicate to one another.
See, I didn't get that particular thing from it. I thought it was actually fairly honest in terms of its characters. I thought it was. I agree with you.
I thought it was a
completely.
little too cute.
One moment she's like throwing herself out of a moving car. The next moment there's nothing like that in the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Nothing that
That's true.
Nothing that extreme. And then like it's like who cares that her love interest is gay? That doesn't go.
It doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't go anywhere. And so it's now I happen to know that the filmmaker, I haven't seen any of her other work, but I know that she mumblecore was her genre before this.
Yes.
Yeah, which is for those who don't know, it's like sort of in probably around like 2010 when digital filmmaking became somewhat the norm. It's about like it's kind of like our cinema verite of today. It's like
Very naturalistic ways of speaking.
Yeah.
and I kind of like that style a little bit. It's obviously it's sort of like a pejorative. People don't respect that genre so much anymore, and people don't really make it either. But
Well, I think this movie embodied a lot of that, though.
how about a narrative?
But I don't think it did. I think it was a little theatrical in a way. Like, I don't think they were talking naturally. Like, I don't think they were. I think it was, like I said, I think it was a little too cute. They would have all these little, like, clever exchanges and.
I'm wondering what the point is.
Yes.
I'm left wondering, like, what was I supposed to have taken away from that film? I know I sound really negative, but it's only because we're going in reverse order.
No, I know. But I actually like this film more than you did, I think. I would put this a couple steps up higher on my list. And the things that I liked about it is I liked the characters. I thought the characters felt pretty real and well written, even though there wasn't a lot of plot to kind of hang any story on. I thought it felt real to me, having grown up in that time. I didn't have that big a problem with it.
Okay. I mean, at least it went by somewhat fast.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Inoffensive.
I wasn't angry at the film so much. I think they developed a lot of the characters. I think I just didn't like who the characters were, and I don't know how real I found them.
I didn't find them developed.
But it wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't throwing the curveballs at me that the other films were.
What do you think the appeal of this movie is? Because it has like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes or something.
There must be some kind of.
Is it just because on the Rotten Tomatoes scale, like, enough people didn't dislike it? Is that the thing?
Man, Rotten Tomatoes is becoming annoying because, like, basically, if you're politically left, you believe that there are armies of alt-right bots that are flooding the critic reviews. And if you're,
I have no idea.
This is something that has been accused of, like The Last Jedi, for instance.
Oh.
That the reason the critic reviews are so low is because of alt-right bots.
I thought it was just because people didn't like it.
Oh, really? If you're politically right, you believe that Rotten Tomatoes, that critics in general, people that work in the critics industry are politically biased, and they're going to champion even bad movies if it says the thing that they want to say. So I almost feel like you go to that website and you don't even know what the hell you're getting.
Yeah.
I don't even go to. I tend to stay away from review sites about movies now because of stuff like that. But I think the thing that people claim to like about this movie is it evokes some nostalgia of a time period that's a little bit gone by now. It evokes characters and situations that people had in high school, even if it's not being particularly accurate about it, or it evokes concepts even from like TV shows of that era. Like there were some very 90210 plot elements or Melrose Place plot elements in it.
Do you think that was on purpose?
I think it was. I think it was intentional. I think they were trying to evoke that in the film
I don't know.
in the moment.
But that's 90s though.
Yeah.
90s. Well,
But that's
this
coming
is
around.
2000.
That's coming around the corner. Right now, we're all very nostalgic for the '80s. Maybe this film is trying to get in when the '90s and 2000s.
This
come
sounds
back.
like when like Star Wars theorists are like George Lucas meant to do something insane. It's like there's no way he did.
No, I'm not saying it's anything that
Ring
positive.
theory.
Yeah.
The ring theory of Ladybird.
The ring theory of Ladybird. Yeah, look, it's obviously not for me. You asked me what I think the appeal is. I think that there must be a lot of people that relate to the character, and I don't.
Yeah.
I'm a conscientious person who
works hard.
I don't get her, and I certainly don't find her funny.
Yeah.
There was that scene where she's like, "I'm gonna make a lot of money, and I'm gonna pay you back for everything that because her mom kept evoking."
Yeah, again, a cliche kind of television show idea. Right?
Yeah, and not to mention, I'm like, but this is not a person who would go make a lot of money. Like that'd be kind of interesting if she really was that person. The kind of
She
person.
became that person.
That'd be cool. Like she comes back with a bunch of cash. She's like,
Just
there you
puts
go.
it on Roseanne's sister's desk.
Roseanne's with her.
I want you to be the very best version of yourself that you can be.
What if this is the best version?
Next for me, in terms of what I disliked the most,
This is a good scale.
is The Shape of Water. Who wants to give that a summary?
No, I can try, right? If you'd like. A woman is lonely and she can't talk and she fucks a fish.
Perfect.
A woman feels incomplete because she is mute and is lonely and works janitorial services
Immediately wants to fuck this.
at a high security.
Like she barely even sees it, and she's like hornily like waltzing up to the tank, putting her ovaries all over the tank.
I'm surprised the mutes of America haven't protested the movie to be like, we don't all fuck fish.
Just a few of us.
First of all, it turns out she was actually a fish anyway. That's why she was mute. So it's not.
God, that whole
She's
thing.
she's a fish.
That's what the scars on her neck were. Because
Oh,
she was
yeah,
found
I
by
knew
the
that.
river.
I knew that.
So she was actually.
That does make a lot more sense.
I didn't even get that because I was so bored.
Yeah, well, that's the problem is these movies lull you to sleep and then some jackass comes, not that you're a jackass, but somebody comes along and it's like, no, there was some critical plot element. I'm like, you expected me to notice anything?
And the fish is not a fish, okay? He's a god, and he makes her feel whole.
So let me just say, I did like the aesthetic of the film to begin with at the start, because I love a good movie that really brings you into its visual language.
I enjoyed all the rain. When the rain started, I was like, this is beautiful, and it sounds great.
I liked the over the old theater aesthetic. That was kind of appealing to me. But it really went downhill when we start to meet the characters, right? We meet the kind of stereotypical gay but not that gay artist guy who
Why is he
has
in the movie?
questionably to be a friend.
Who was an alcoholic and lost his job in advertising.
Yeah, we didn't need any of that.
Because it's supposed to be a movie about freaks, and they're all banding together.
Yeah,
you got the gay, you got the mute, you got the Russian.
It's like, look, we all agree that gay people should be able to be with whoever they want, so now we have to agree that this woman can be with a fish man.
Yeah, and not only that, but this movie had a couple. Some of the moments I hated most about this movie were the racism is bad thing, right?
And I'm not even sure like why that was a motif in this fish fucking movie.
No, I'm not sure either. When I hate when movies use racism to tell you a character.
This movie had the supreme racist, sexist, rapist, white male villain.
Male Christian.
Military man ever.
It was played by Michael Shannon. This character was so mustache twirling and over the top, it really made me question Guillermo del Toro's judgment.
It would have actually made the movie a lot more interesting if he had been more kind of gray area and nuanced. And because he had the opportunity to through the writing.
And they started to show his wife and his children, and I was like, oh, maybe this will be like a fairly deep
that would have been
character.
a much more interesting approach to his character, and it wouldn't have been much work to get there.
Also, casting Michael Shannon as the villain, that's groundbreaking casting right there. Never been done before.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like he's gonna come in there and be a little bit perverted and weird, and like there's like the scene where he's having sex with his wife like too aggressively.
Yeah, and he's like covering her mouth.
Like,
and
why? Is
He wants her to be silent because he's attracted to the mute woman.
It's
Is that what that was?
Yes.
And why?
Because he's bad.
And of course he's like, I want to kill that fish.
I want to kill the fish because
I want to
really
cut
like
him open.
And she's like, no, don't kill my fish. I need to fuck him.
But she didn't say.
She's signing it.
No,
And then there's a Russian spy who cares about science more than Russia.
And can I
no
just say
reason.
one thing about the film that really pissed me off? So there's a scene, to spoil it completely for you, where they have sex in a bathroom above the theater.
Oh my.
And the bathroom fills with water.
Easily my favorite scene, by the way.
That's your favorite scene?
I thought it was at least
whimsical.
Yeah, it was something. It was like it made my imagination run a little bit.
It was disastrously awful. I mean,
well, I mean, obviously it was practically, it would do much more damage than it even did in the movie.
Yeah, there's no way that ceiling could hold everything.
Yeah.
I give the
water would
movie
just
props.
leak.
I give the movie props though for kind of setting up her interest in the fish. So this is why she's interested in the fish to begin with, because she masturbates in the tub all the time.
Yeah.
They kind of set that up by
I thought
being
it was
like,
because she was a fish.
And then
Well,
she has
that's-
like eggs all over the place when she's masturbating. I don't even know.
Yeah, and then she eats like these eggs very sensually all the time. Then she feeds him eggs very sensually.
and eggs are hard-boiled eggs are the
It's a
least
beautiful
sensual
film
food
about
ever.
beautiful people.
And then there's Octavia Spencer who plays the help again.
By the way, my favorite character in the film.
Really?
I mean, because no one else is even close to interesting.
But I mean, she was canned Octavia Spencer.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'll take that can.
she's kind of just like, girl, what are you doing?
Crack me open a can.
There's literally a scene. Go ahead.
Yeah, the mute describes where the penis comes from.
Well, because Octavia's like, where does the penis come from?
Does she have a penis?
And she's like,
Boop.
and describes, I guess,
And
a
she's like,
penis.
oh,
And she goes,
men got secrets.
and then they giggle. I'm like, you're talking about like a fish's weird retracted penis. What's going on in this movie? Not that I'm not turned off by weirdness. In fact, I actually didn't think it was weird enough in a lot of ways. Like that Michael Shannon thing was too cheesy and ridiculous. And, I guess if there was one thing I really hated about the movie, it was the Michael Shannon thing.
Yeah.
Because to have a character like that shows me that like you're like tone deaf or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't trust your own movie to you don't trust your audience to let them determine which character.
Did this movie even need a villain?
No.
I don't think
Like,
so.
is there a reason to have a
No,
villain?
they could have just been trying to save the creature, like the
Yeah.
creature through no one's.
It could have just been a free
Intent.
willy situation,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a free fucking.
I did think it was a sexy Free Willy.
Oh man, that would have been great if they were like, hold me like a river Jordan.
But
And he jumps over the mute, but his little dick comes out. And I would then say to you, Octavia Spencer. I apologize for talking about this stuff in front of you.
there's going to be filmic evidence, and you're going to find it one day.
Like, oh God, what was he doing?
But Guillermo del Toro, I do like his style.
He's brilliant.
When I started watching the movie, my brain was turned off and I was very enchanted.
Yes, I was too.
But then as the movie progressed, my brain started turning on and pissing me off, and
Yeah.
it just soured the whole thing.
I agree with Frankie, mainly with that villain piece. Like, I could have bought a lot of the other characters and kind of went on their ride and seen how they were interacting, but adding that villain in and then having him just.
And he wasn't in a negligible amount of the movie.
Yeah, he was
All
a
over the
very
place.
persistent force.
And a
In more ways than
constant
one.
threat to everybody, yeah.
Yeah. And every time we see him, he's being an asshole and a jerk.
Yeah, an asshole and a jerk. That's what I thought about the fish fucking movie.
What is he saying?
Don't do this.
Oh, God, it's not even human. If I told you about her, what would I say? I wonder.
Next up is The Darkest Hour. Gary Oldman plays, Ernest Borgnine.
Winston
Churchill.
In the moments as England is entering the war, just as it's beginning to enter the war.
So it is an origin story for Winston Churchill, because it shows him rising to prime minister.
Yes.
Even though he's quite old by then, has been in politics for a long time.
Yeah, he becomes prime minister on the back of this because there's a scandal that the other man, because of the way it was
dying.
mishandled.
Neville Chamberlain.
Yeah, and he's dying secretly.
Oh, good job, Nina. Neville Chamberlain. Ernest Borgnine.
And this movie was kind of interesting to me because it's one of those historical films, and we get one of these every year. A historical film that's not particularly accurate about the character you're telling the story about. That's got some saccharine moments that never happened, like when he goes to meet the people in the train.
That would have been a better documentary because it's a fascinating time period. But there are tons of fascinating documentaries about it, so why make it unless you're going to win an Oscar?
I will say this: I didn't think the movie was some big piece of shit.
No,
I thought like, look, if I was in history class and the movie was largely accurate, and the teacher popped it on for like a break to give us a little break before Christmas break or something, I'd be like, okay. Yeah. Like this is good medicine.
But what about every time they went back to the House of Parliament and it was dimly lit with the smoky lenses?
It's totally cheesy.
And they're all like,
every time we cut with that thing that they set up about the handkerchief on the leg.
Yeah.
And like then finally at the end he kind of looks at the
wipes
handkerchief.
his mouth.
Yeah, and wipes his mouth and everyone goes, it's just corny and lame.
Yeah. I did think it was too dark. There wasn't enough color. Like it was like
just gray.
It was like browns and blacks.
Yeah.
And that's it. And
browns and beiges.
And it glorifies him as a man. It doesn't talk about his alcoholism at all.
They hint at the son's alcoholism when they're with like the family. They're like, we get through it the best ways we can, and the son's like drinking. I'm like,
that's it.
And I don't think it's an especially good performance. But
No, it's hammy.
I actually thought that John Lithgow in The Crown did a much better Winston Churchill than this guy did.
And I think as royal like drama goes, I think that's a better.
The Crown is way better.
Is better.
Costume
English costume drama. That's better.
Yeah.
Also, movie from a few years ago, The King's Speech is a better
Yes, it is.
film about that era.
That's right. Well, because the king, who is played by General Krennic from Rogue One, he's portraying King George VIII or something. It's the same king that's portrayed in The King's Speech.
Yeah, which was better played in that movie by that guy.
the current Queen Elizabeth's father.
Yeah.
But for sure. But also I would say that that like The King's Speech is an example of somebody going through something human during historical events, which tends to make for better narrative. And I also thought The King's Speech had a lot more just kind of directorial vision. Yeah. There was the set design, the cinematography, the ways that the performances were directed. Yeah. It all had a lot more vision. Yeah. This felt like we're gonna make that cheesy historical drama Oscar movie
in a dusty closet.
In a dusty closet.
And there is a lot of like Oscar chewing the scenery, screaming. Like he's blown his lid all the time and chewing people out.
Yeah, like chewing secretaries out and walking naked.
Was he nominated for performance?
Yes.
He's probably going to win too.
Really?
Well, that's the rumor that, and it's probably because Gary Oldman's been a fixture of Hollywood.
It's like time to give him one.
Because he didn't get it for Dracula, we got to give it to him.
What is it like if he had one performance? Is it a Sid and Nancy? Which one would it be?
Dracula.
Nina's really on the Dracula boat.
Man in Planet of the Apes.
The bad guy in Air Force One.
Leon the Professional. Doesn't he do the everyone?
I mean, he is impressive. He vanishes into his roles, and he's great, but not this time.
No, I could see the Gary Oldman seams for once.
Yeah. He didn't actually vanish into the Dracula hairdo.
and instead of him portraying like an ailing Winston Churchill, I'm like, oh, Gary Oldman doesn't look so good. I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the worst thing I can say about this movie is I have very little to say about this movie.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is
it didn't inspire the same amount of fury as some of the others did.
No, you know what we have to say about this movie? It kept making you want to go watch Dunkirk. And like, there's a more interesting movie happening on the other side of the
Christopher Nolan's film. He was talking about Christopher Nolan's film throughout the movie, and you wanted him to cut to it.
You know what would be a really fun thing to do? Is intercut between Dunkirk, King's Speech, and Darkest Hour.
I would watch the shit out of that.
That would be pretty cool, actually.
We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. For without victory, there can be no survival.
I put this, I categorize this as not good, but it's my favorite of the not goods, is 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which John keeps referring to it as 3 Billboards Outside Billings, Montana.
I guess it doesn't really matter though if it's not based on a true story, right?
It does sound very much like a based on true history. Like I don't know, like a lynching happened.
do you think they want you to get that feeling? They want to slightly mislead you?
I researched it. So to summarize quickly, Frances McDormand, a mainstay of Coen Brothers films, plays a mother whose daughter was killed and raped a year prior. No arrests have been made, and she's starting to feel like the small town cops have given up entirely. So she rents out some cheap billboard space to put up big damning messages about the police.
Which totally does happen. There's been billboards in New Bedford for years about this.
To try to get more public attention, because what she's read that if there's more public attention on the crime, then there's more likelihood that the criminal will be caught.
Now, doesn't that sound like a really interesting movie? Because this movie was not.
That sounds like the premise of a great thriller.
Yes.
Where you, a whodunit thriller, and you're going to be on the edge of your seat the whole time, and it fucking isn't.
We've got some mustache twirlers.
Well, let me just say, and you can finish your. I'll let you finish your summary. But this movie for me was just above the Phantom Thread in terms of how much I disliked this movie a lot.
Yeah, and EJ did too.
I did.
Yeah, but go.
So yeah, well, it basically becomes kind of an ad lib from there.
Yeah.
The chief of police, played by Woody Harrelson, is like a favorite in the town. He's well respected because she calls him out directly in the billboards. For her to do that it makes her reputation trash.
He's dying of cancer.
And he's dying of cancer, and everybody knows that. Sam Rockwell plays a racist, angry, mustache-twirling cop that's at the station. And basically, it's just about the interplay between these characters. Spoilers, Woody Harrelson kills himself. That complicates the plot a little bit.
Doesn't she date for no reason?
She dates Peter Dinklage for absolutely no reason at all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they made it about him being like a dwarf, but I think it's probably just because they cast him. Yeah. I think they probably originally wrote it to be like an unattractive, like hillbilly.
Yes.
So I don't know. The movie is all over the place, but worst of all, when Woody Harrelson kills himself, he had suicide notes for everybody who mattered to him, and Sam Rockwell gets one, and he basically says, "Don't be a villain anymore." And he just decides to stop being a villain, and he decides to start helping her solve the case. And at the end of the movie, they're like going on a road trip together as best friends.
Yeah.
As far as him being a racist, that ends up being completely irrelevant. There really is no race element in the movie.
And I'm kind of mad that they just brought it up. It felt very pandering, like. Because there's like a black police chief, and that's about it. And then they don't do
ultimately treat him with respect because they have to.
And they don't really go anywhere with that thread. You know, Frances McDormand just brings it up. Dermot.
I mean, one of the things
just brings it up for no reason. She's like, "Oh, you don't like black people," and it sounds as pandering as that. You know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that sounds a lot like The Shape of Water, where it's like, let's just throw everything at this villain and make him horrible.
Yeah, and they kind of like imply that he's closeted gay, and it's like they throw every hammy thing, and they're saying he's going to win Best Supporting Actor.
There's also there's a character that shows up at her shop, and it strongly implies that he's the rapist and killer.
But he's not.
But then he's not.
He's not.
He just burned and raped some other woman and talked about it.
And he talks about it openly. It really is. But the thing that I think is most important to talk about with this movie is there is really tone-deaf interplay between the drama and comedy.
Yeah.
And before people go, oh, you just can't handle a dramedy. I can handle a dramedy. I've seen a few movies in my life.
I think what that comes out of, Frankie, is the fact that this tries so hard and fails so badly to be a Coen Brothers film.
In a way,
all the way through, it's got all the Coen Brothers actors. It's got Carter Burtwell doing the score. It's got the styling, but it doesn't have the deftness of shot choice, of moving the story forward, of directing the acting. I mean, if you look at that every frame of painting where it talks about how the Coen Brothers do their films and how without the Coen Brothers, even if it's written by them, how different it is. There's a great little scene from that. But this felt so wanting to be that and falling so short.
It's a good Coen Brothers film snowballs. Like, it's a snowballing effect throughout the film. This was almost like something happened.
It started off really big.
Something happened, then it does something to lower the stakes. Yeah. There's the concept in improv where you don't ever want to lower the stakes. If you say, "Oh, I've cut off my arm," you don't want to say, the other character can't be like, "Oh no, you didn't," or "Oh no, it grew back." Like, you don't want to do that. You want to constantly be snowballing and getting the stakes risen, and that's what a good Coen Brothers movie does. And this almost does the Last Jedi thing. Is like, we're going to subvert your expectations at every turn,
and in doing so, demean the narrative.
And demean the narrative, and it just goes nowhere. It's just like, oh, I blew up the police station, but it doesn't really matter.
It also has that and then problem, where like it feels more like it feels like the writer came back to it once a week and then like added like a few pages and then left, and then came back and added a few pages and left. Like it doesn't feel to me like and then or therefore because but. But as far as the handling of the scenes and the comedy and the drama, like I was talking about, it's more like the joke wasn't very good. It was it was almost like it was performed bad, or the timing wasn't good, or it just wasn't that. And then there's like dramatic music under it, so it was doing like a dramatic thing. And now there's a joke though, and then the whole scene and the scene's shot a little boring anyway, so it's not drawing my attention in any kind of interesting way. And the whole thing just ends up feeling mismanaged.
Yeah.
And it felt like that happened a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love a good dark comedy, but this sometimes was trying to be a super realistic drama, and then it does something like really corny and really out of place dark humor, and then that didn't land.
Yeah.
So Frankie, this isn't that far down. So what did you enjoy about the film?
I guess it was like, so unlike something like The Post, that in no way did each scene draw me in. So, or Phantom Thread, where I felt like I was like naked in the desert. I was like, I have no idea when there's gonna be water. I don't know what's going, like, while I thought that the movie was generally mismanaged, at least the characters seemed to care about what they were saying. The scenes were short enough. Sometimes there was cause and effect. It's like when the chief of police kills himself and Sam Rockwell like bolts it towards the guy who sold her the billboards, and he throws him out the window. It's like it's an interesting scene, I suppose. It's just, I don't know, things are happening at least. Yeah. They're at times incoherent.
Yeah,
but
that's for sure.
They're at least happening. So I thought, like, if you made me watch any one of these again and I landed on this one, I wouldn't cry.
This reporter, for one, hopes this finally puts an end to the strange saga of the 3 billboards outside.
This doesn't put an end to shit, you fucking retard. This is just a fucking start. Why don't you put that on your Good Morning Missouri fucking wake up broadcast, bitch?
All right, so now the next 3 movies I liked.
Okay.
Hello. So Call Me By Your Name. It's a beautifully shot movie in a beautiful location. And it's about a young gay man who lives with his Italian-American Jewish family, and his father's an archaeologist professor, and Armie Hammer is a grad student who comes to live with them. And he's a little bit older than the gay son. The son who's not out, by the way. Over the summer, the two of them find themselves falling in love and having a lot of sex. And Armie Hammer, the older one, doesn't really want to come out. And the younger one, he's got hippie parents, so he doesn't really care. And that's kind of it. They eventually become estranged after the end of the summer. And it's kind of about loss. It's about being young and in love and losing something you had.
No, I think that, so this is a gay film, right? This is a gay topic.
Wicked gay.
And there's only a few ways that these stories can end, right? There's only a couple ways. Either like one of them, like somebody comes between them, the parents.
Right, or they meet up at a diner years later.
Yeah, they meet up at a diner years later, like Moonlight.
Or
they're separated by time. This is what happened with this movie. Is time was the thing that pulls them apart, right?
And also some of Armie Hammer's hang-ups.
Yes, yeah, which I thought was actually a little interesting.
Yeah.
That the younger person with the parents right there is not the one.
Yeah, that was a really interesting. That's an interesting subversion of expectations.
Yeah.
Where somebody a little bit older and more mature actually hasn't come to terms with himself quite yet.
Yeah.
When I heard this premise, I immediately grew. Just like Lady Bird, I'm so sick of the coming of age story.
Yeah,
and this had a premise. The premise, like the boy wants to figure out which hole he needs to fuck.
Literally.
Literally.
There's some gratuitous stuff in this, but also John thought they chickened out on the sex a little bit.
I did. I thought they did. But they went pretty much full hand with the straight sex, and the gay sex they panned tastefully to a tray.
Yeah.
Was it done better at the end of Dawson's Creek with Jack and Pacey's brother? Because this is the same story.
But anyway, as I was saying, while the premise made me kind of groan a bit, it rose above it. Because even though it's a premise I'm sick of, finding your sexuality, I thought it was much more interesting visually. The characters were great. I thought, it was 2 hours, but I didn't feel the 2 hours.
We watched it right after we watched The Post. And the, the Post, which I feel like had no vision at all.
Yeah. Felt like it was made by a machine.
This was a lot of vision.
This had opening credits that were, there weren't anything special. It was like some notebooks or something. And already I was like, somebody made this movie.
Yeah.
Like a human being made this movie.
Yeah,
like
somebody
I could tell.
cared about this project.
Yeah, and that never let up, the whole film. And I guess it was based on a book.
It is.
But it was, I think, a couple of the things that made it stand out from all the others is, first of all, the really excellent central performances.
Yeah, really good.
The 17-year-old kid is really good. He's also in Lady Bird, by the way. He plays like the,
Oh, he plays the emo kid, right?
Yeah.
Wow, he was
didn't
so
even know
much
it.
better
He's
in
a
this
good
film.
actor.
Yeah, he's really good in this.
Wow, he was really mediocre in that film, but that just shows the power of good directing and storytelling.
And he's allowed in this he's really allowed to do some interesting stuff. Like, obviously, there's the big performance moment at the end in the credits, which was
it was beautiful.
that was great.
This cool, classy moment where he's just hanging out in the house by the fire. He just found out that Armie Hammer's getting engaged, and it's just like through the credits they give you 5 minutes of him just contemplating, on the dread of that,
staring into the fire,
and it was really moving.
It was beautiful.
But then Armie Hammer is really good. Like he feels like he's really putting out this arrogant, conceited, brilliant guy, but he actually has everything to learn from the 17-year-old.
Yeah.
I also thought it was ballsy, especially with the Kevin Spacey stuff and everything else, that they went ahead and let this happen.
Yeah,
this underage thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is like a younger person going after an older man, although it's 17 and 25.
Age of consent.
It's pretty tame by that standard.
One of the things that I both liked about it, but I also was like scratching my head a little bit, because John and I watched this together and I kept talking about it during the movie. I was like, what are the stakes again? And eventually they got around to telling you.
Yeah.
But I was like, is it that is his family homophobic? Because I really doubt it. They seem really hippie-ish. And
because they basically, even like in the beginning, they're like, so you're gonna fuck that man?
Yeah. I brought you a nice hot man.
I brought you a nice hot man for you to fuck. Are you fucking him? Are you fucking the lady? I don't care if you fuck either.
You should really fuck someone.
You should fuck somebody.
Have some fun, you. Spoilers at the end, when like his father's like, by the way, I know you were totally in love with that guy. He's like, and by the way, I totally had my own gay affair when I was a kid. So like, I guess like, in a way, it demeans the story to have no conflict really, other than Armie Hammer doesn't want to go through with it.
And it's kind of implied that, or not implied, he tells him that his parents were very anti-gay and very much so.
And that helps.
And so that kind of like retroactively adds to the stakes.
That's right. But on the other hand, I liked it because almost always it's like, my parents wouldn't understand, man.
Yeah, that becomes a cliche.
And I feel like I've seen that movie a lot of times. This also took place during the 80s in northern Italy.
Yeah.
And
New setting.
They didn't make it feel like an 80s movie, but they did a really awesome job of making the period that they're living in a little bit 80s-ish. Like some of the dancing and some of the party scenes.
But the shooting and the storytelling wasn't trapped in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's this is northern Italy with rich people.
Yeah.
I mean, everything, like, it's a summer where nobody has much to do except for fuck each other.
It's a very privileged movie.
It's a very privileged movie. So it's not exactly like there's a lot of stakes here otherwise. Hi. You want me to tell you more call you by your name? I still thought that, so for that reason, the pace is not lightning fast.
Yes.
But it didn't, like with Phantom Thread, where I'm like, we're doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, that's true.
This movie had a little narrative drive.
It revealed a little bit more about the characters.
Yeah.
It was done very it was a very human movie. Like you felt like there was like a sensuality to it that wasn't gross, too gross.
There was something totally relatable about it too. Like I think everybody can relate to that thing of like, I had either this friend or this relationship or this opportunity or this period of time in my life where I was here and now I have to leave it forever. And there's something really, especially if relationships are important to you, there's something really painful about just moving on from people.
Never being able to get back to that moment.
Yeah. And so I thought this was great, and I totally recommend it.
I agree. It surprised me. Like I said, the premise made me groan, but it blew me away.
This was this year's Hell or High Water.
Yeah, I think
the movie that you didn't know existed.
Yeah.
And then you watched it because of Oscars, and you were delightfully surprised.
Call me by your name, and I'll call you by mine.
So next up is Dunkirk.
Dunkirk.
Which is my second favorite of the group. And like I said, what I would consider one of the three good ones.
Yeah, probably my favorite.
Yeah, a brilliantly directed, brilliantly visually conceived, excellent storytelling.
So
it's really all around.
So it's
really
pretty
good.
simple. It's during the events of the Battle of Dunkirk, the English have been cornered.
They've had to fall back to the beach.
They've had to fall back to the beach, and if they could somehow get across the English Channel back to England, they'd be solid.
There was what, 30,000 missiles?
No, there was 400,000.
400,000. Oh, okay. So I think it was 300,000. They were talking about in
320,000 made it
in the
out.
darkest hours.
So this is the interesting half of the darkest hour, and it's a fleet of civilian boats come over to save them.
Churchill conceives and orders that.
That's kind of the heart of the thing.
Because the other politicians, like Parliament in England, won't send any actual Navy vessels because they're afraid that they'll be destroyed, and then they won't have them to protect Britain for when they think they're eventually going to get invaded.
So the civilian ships are kind of the heart of the whole thing, because it is an incredible story. This idea of like, if you've got a boat, go get some.
And it's all this pleasure craft. It's like teak sailboats.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has kind of three stories it's telling, right? It's telling this one story about this fighter pilot who's got a fuel situation he's got to manage. He's telling the story about this young man who's trapped on the beach and trying to get off. And then telling the story about one of the men who actually owns the boat and is driving to France to pick up soldiers.
With his young boys.
Yeah, with his boy. With his
one of
son
whom was played by the freaky kid from The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a great movie, by the way, but very strange.
So this is... One, I love that Tom Hardy's behind like a mask the whole time.
Yeah, again.
And he's awesome. He's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And then the score is almost breathtaking.
And the sound design in general.
The sound design score.
Nolan's been trying to nail something for a while. Nolan, in Interstellar and Dark Knight Rises specifically, his sound mixes have been really experimental. And in general, people have been very critical of them. Like, I can't hear the dialogue, or it's mixed. Bane's voice is too surround sound or something like that. I saw this in IMAX. I've never seen anything like this before. So I would say 90% of the movie was shot in IMAX, which unlike The Dark Knight Rises, which is like 40% or something, almost all of the film. Pretty much everything except for the stuff that was on the civilian ship.
Yeah, that was, when I was watching it in 4K, I had a 4K copy, but I was only watching it in 2K.
Yeah.
And you could tell from the water scenes that clearly a very beautiful camera was used. I didn't realize it was IMAX.
It was incredible.
Well, I watched it in standard definition on my iMac, just like Nolan intended.
Yeah. Some people criticize this movie for not having a sort of like Titanic-esque love story at the center of it.
Oh, I'm so glad it didn't. That was one of the things I loved most about it, was the fact that we didn't need to insert too much fake history into this to give it kind of a core. Didn't need to do that to give it a sentence.
No, I was very engaged, and man, like I also know that Nolan's been really interested in doing large scale filmmaking for a long time. Yeah. And some of those wide shots of the beach and, the amount of men on the beach.
And the framing is so, it's breathtaking. Every frame is almost a painting.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you can get yourself a 4K or even a Blu-ray copy, watch it on a really nice TV with really nice surround sound. It'll give you PTSD. I mean, it's scary.
I had some really good headphones on, so I was really like into the sound design, and it's engrossing.
Yeah.
It's engrossing.
And I'm not always a Nolan guy.
No, I'm not.
I'm not like a huge Inception dude.
I didn't like Interstellar. I didn't like it's like love is the way to space or whatever. I don't care. That was so stupid.
Often my biggest complaint with Nolan is that he over-explains things that don't need to be over-explained, and he under-explains things that I feel need explanations. And like Interstellar was rife with that, and got Inception, he kept taking 10 minutes out of the movie just to explain the rules to you and stuff. And I was like, this is over-explained. This movie was focused. It was about an incredible event in history that I don't think I ever, without the art of cinema, I don't think I ever could have put myself there.
Well, and I think him not over-explaining really worked well because so much of this was just emotion and what you were feeling, and whether you were feeling like the fear or the uncertainty, and he didn't over-explain that. He didn't have a Tom Hanks scene where he tells you what's at stake or anything.
No.
I love the way this movie used non-dialogue and used silence, because it used it a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And it was super effective in terms of relaying the emotions and letting things kind of play out and develop just visually.
It was naturalistic almost.
It was, for something that was so massive.
Yeah.
And I also like, it felt really accessible. Like for how many, this is why I feel kind of bad I didn't remember exactly how many men were on the beach, but like you didn't get these giant like CG shots of just like troops and troops. It like you kind of got into these little pockets of the story and you kind of knew what was at risk, but you didn't have to see just armies of men.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's part of the interesting perspective that the characters have on the situations, because the characters don't get to see 400,000 men. The characters see a couple thousand on a beach.
And not a bit of it felt like CG to me.
No.
Not one frame felt like CG.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I actually didn't even enter my mind.
Obviously, there was a lot of it.
Yeah.
He like the sound design too was really helpful in making me feel what some of the tech was like, because like it wasn't advanced. You know, it was mechanical stuff that was loud and smelled.
Yeah.
And and I really got that.
Yeah. And I like how they made all that Tom Hardy stuff feel compelling and interesting, even though it's basically a shot of him in the cockpit.
Oh yeah.
Like it's like everything felt so textured and so interesting. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it's a great film.
But it got kind of weirdly. I mean, I'm glad it got nominated, but it got a little snubbed.
Yeah,
well, it was Dunkirk so white.
Yeah, people didn't like that there were white people in it.
I think people are sick of like Christopher Nolan or something. They're mad at him.
Out of nowhere.
I don't know.
Because I thought they were like worshiping him up until this moment.
Yeah,
like
which is kind of funny because I've never like was a super fan of his, but this is a movie of his that I like.
I agree.
You can practically see it from here.
What?
Home.
All right, and then finally, my number.
I
one
keep
pick
forgetting that this movie is even like in the running because it just does not feel like an Oscars.
It doesn't feel like it.
Is Get Out by Jordan Peele.
So Get Out is a horror film almost. It's
a thriller,
It's
a thriller,
horror.
a thriller horror. It's about a black man in an interracial relationship, and he's going to see his significant other's parents, who are very waspy white people, and there's a lot of tension and sinister things happening in the background, but he can't really figure out what it is, and then you find out that the main twist of the movie is that spoilers is that they're a family that hypnotizes black men
and body snatches them,
and then switches brains of older people into these black specimen black people bodies because they feel that the black form is superior in a twist because it seems like they're like
in wanting to be youthful and athletic. Yeah, it seems like they're racist.
And they say a lot of weird off-putting things like
so their racism is the fetishism of black youths.
I loved the things that this movie did with race and racism. I love the way it kind of set your expectations and then twisted your expectations and twisted them again in a way that was kind of new and kind of interesting to me.
And even when it seemed like it was going in an obvious direction, it was always funny.
Yes.
And it was always interesting. I mean, when it first starts off, it's just like, he shows up and he's kind of dealing with all the typical things you might imagine, going to see like Anglo parents where they're telling you that they voted for Barack Obama. And they're being over the top about it, and they're being tactless, and they're not at all like up with how to handle these kinds of situations.
But his girlfriend they kind of give away that the girlfriend's in on something early on, because it's like, why does she keep leaving him alone with these people? Why is she such a jerk leaving him alone all the time?
And I love her brother is played by that redheaded kid he played Banshee in X-Men First Class. He was a really creepy character in The Last Exorcism, like same basic kind of character. He sold the billboards in 3 billboards. I really like that actor.
He's good.
He has this unsettlingness about him.
He does,
absolutely. Where if you always cast Michael Shannon as the bad guy, you always cast this guy as like the what's going on here?
As the slightly off-putting, what are his motivations guy?
And just the movie is funny. It's scary as all hell.
Yeah.
Like when we were in the theater, we were just like on the edge of our seats. Like the suspension. I haven't seen a movie that played with suspense this well in a very long time. Where I just felt like it was ratcheted up. The
only thing that felt out of place, I enjoyed it, but the only thing that feels out of place, big spoilers throughout the whole thing. I'm aware, but when his friend shows up and rescues him.
I actually loved that movie.
I loved it. Like, personally, it was enjoyable to watch it as a film goer.
Reliever.
But it was like everything else, not that it seemed realistic, but like everything else was kind of on the same tense plane, and then that one was just like this comic moment.
Yeah, you almost expect a Night of the Living Dead ending where a cop shoots him.
Everybody gets shot,
And,
and that was what it subverted. I thought if you know you're Night of the Living Dead, you're expecting that, and then it was great.
Because all great horror has like some political commentary, and to the point where it's like a trope, and then it kind of subverts that trope, and then you're just like, this movie.
and the message ended up being like, trust the guy who doesn't trust white women.
You can tell that Jordan Peele, he knows his horror. He's obviously very funny. We already knew that. But he's also like very cinematic. There were like that sequence where he's being hypnotized for the first time and he's falling.
Really good.
I was spellbound. I felt trapped with him. The dude's performance with like the tears that were uncontrollable.
Yeah, the main what's his name?
I don't know his name.
He is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I think he was nominated for the best actor, I think.
But there was the woman who played actually the whole cast that played the Help.
Yeah.
On the like.
That were actually the grandparents.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
funny.
I love that whole idea.
What a great movie. I mean, I couldn't recommend it more. I think it's really cool that it got nominated.
Yeah.
I'm shocked by that. It's like this year's Mad Max.
Yeah. I think it's unique, well written. It's surprising. I don't think I've ever been this surprised by a movie in a while, and the fact that it's nominated.
And they released it in like March. Like I think they thought it was going to be like a Don't Breathe kind of horror movie or something. But it's better than that, smarter than that, and I can't wait to see what he directs next.
If there's too many white people, I get nervous.
No. No.
All right, John. Who do you think is going to win?
I think it's going to be one of the ones we hate. I think it's going to be The Post, or it's going to be The Thread. I think those are the ones that are gonna come up.
Oh yeah, sorry, we made a mistake. It was actually Moonlight.
I think my favorite film of the bunch is probably Dunkirk, and seconded by Call Me by Your Name.
So what I think is going to win, I think it's going to be Shape of Water, and but what I want to win, Dunkirk. That was hands down my favorite cinematic experience from last year.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that maybe 3 Billboards. It won the Golden Globe, I think.
That's true.
So maybe. But if Get Out won, that would be like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah,
So
I would not be mad. Look, I would not be mad if Get Out, Call Me by Your Name, or Dunkirk won. That'd be
all good movies.
I preferred Dunkirk. I would love if that won. I think Get Out was also great. I think that actually stands a chance because of some politics. But I think it's going to be something just horrible like The Post. I think it's just going to be I think it's going to be one of those years where we're just like, seriously?
Like Crash.
Oh my God. Don't be that. Don't be crashier.
So I beg the viewers right now to go subscribe to RCE Pods and Clips.
Yep.
Our other channel. There might even be we're planning on putting exclusive content on that channel. So if you love Red Cow Entertainment, and you don't want to miss anything, you have to subscribe to that channel.
That's right.
And
Do it.
then during the Oscars, we will probably do our Oscar podcast once again.
Yeah.
So all the other categories, Best Actor, Best Actress, movies that didn't even get nominated, we'll talk about it.
Hooray for Hollywood.
Movies. Hooray for Hollywood and 90s cars.
So see you next year for our next review lounge.